So welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today it is my honor to have fellow Ottawa citizen Jenny Michell with me. So Chavender's vision is to help more people do more good. She's the founder and president of Chavender, and she works closely with not-for-profit leaders to change the world one mission at a time. Chavender assists organizations and charities across Canada as well as the US to inspire their donors and achieve their fundraising goals through personalized fundraising coaching and training. Before completing her CFRE, Jenny trained as a classical musician and earned her doctorate of musical arts. She brings her creative approach, her drive for excellence, and her passion for people to the world of nonprofits. So welcome, Jenny.
Oh, thank you very much, Jack.
It's so good to have you here and another fundraising consultant actually here in Ottawa. So we didn't have to go very far.
That is probably what the biggest challenge for our sector is. I think it ties back to our turnover rates. I think it ties back to a lot of things, is the lack of understanding of what fund development really is and the space to have it thrive. I mean, when I walk into shops, there's usually like two or three things. If the money's not coming in, on the pipeline, there's usually one or two or three things. Number one is nobody is actually asking or planning to ask for money. So they're stuck in administration and trivia, which is like, oh, I need to change the font on my board agenda meeting, right? That doesn't bring in more money. So they're stuck down here. The four quadrants, they're not in the revenue generating or leadership category of planning to generate revenue. They don't have any clear idea, number two, any idea of what they're actually raising money for. So there's no projects. It's kind of black hole fundraising. It's please give us money to, or maybe three. The only other thing I can think of is, so if it's not the case and it's not the activities, it's possible the pipeline isn't strong enough. But my answer to that is always, okay, fine. Well, we need to spend time building the pipeline, and I'll give you some time to do that. But first step is you have to acknowledge the pipeline sucks, because that's also another false reality we get into, right? And then maybe four is, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, they just don't have the systems. They're just running an office in chaos. And that is a horrible place to be. For any of your listeners who are there, I'm so sorry. Where you walk in the door and you have no idea where to start. I call it awareness, engagement, and visioning. So awareness is, holy crap, I'm managing chaos. Engagement is like, okay, I've got a couple things that are running a bit like a system. I can count on a couple things. Things are starting to come together. It has a plan that holds together. And then visioning is everybody knows when they show up in the day what their role is, what their task is, how they're running through. They have clear goals individually and as a team. I believe in that. I think people want autonomy. The board knows where we're going. And the funny part is, Jack, of course, once you get to visioning, you know where you go next, eh?
Exactly, just the loop,
awareness.
Right? Yeah,
it's basically a cycle, right?
Yeah, and part of it I've always found is kind of that push-pull with the boards and bosses, right? And the more successful you become, the less they understand it and just say, okay, the person over there kind of does their voodoo. Yeah. And lo and behold, there's money that shows up. We don't really understand it, but every now and then we're going to ask them some difficult questions because we think that we have to as a board and boss. And it doesn't really work that way, or it doesn't work effectively that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have a question for you, and this is it. We're recording this, so you have to answer honestly. I used to spend a lot of time, on teaching and educating and empowering boards, and I still think it's worth doing, but I don't spend the same amount of energy as I used to. I tend to be focusing more on the process and the systems and building it and showing that through the proof. I'm curious.
So my big push is to always have a fundraising committee, that it's not the board that's dealing with fundraising, because most of the board were recruited for governance, right? And they may or may not even have terms of reference. Some of them may have a minimum gift, like with a dollar amount. Some may say it has to be in your top 5 of charities. Some may say you have to do X number of stewardship steps. But I think that's an impediment, right? Those that really don't like fundraising are just going to dig their heels in and then not show up and not do the work. So have a fundraising committee where their sole goal is making sure the dollars are coming in,
Yeah.
and they'll be much more receptive, and they can be a committee of the board. I've kind of found that the boards themselves are not the best places for me to spend some time.
No. I'm so glad to hear that validated. And, I often will say, I can come and do a fundraising 101 for your board, but this is
Right.
not going to solve your problems. I just feel like it's a disingenuous thing to do. And as I get older, again, I go back to I don't have time. I want to be as impactful with your donor dollars that you're trusting me with. And so I want to get right to the core of it. I've been doing
Right.
some modules too where I have like I got tired of saying the same
Yeah.
things as I'm sure you did, Jack. So I built the modules, okay? And what I love about this is module 1 to 10 and it only gets
Right.
you to the second meeting. Like just from a context of like, oh,
Hmm.
here's all the preparation, here's all the steps, here's where you should look. Here's how you prepare, here's how you follow up. Like those little things matter. And I feel like if you get to the second meeting, sure, I'm happy to do a module on asking and all that stuff, but that
Right.
almost happens organically if you can set
Yeah.
those stages right. Anyway, it's been well received, and it saves me a little bit of laryngitis on the same time. And I really do think that when the board comes together, those I love those moments of self-realization, right? What they thought fundraising was and what it actually turns out to be. And as much as we can be talking heads and talk about this, when peers say to each other, "Oh, I just had a great lunch and I learned all this stuff," and wow, I have to tell you the story about how she feels about our hospital. Like, it's so much more
Most
powerful when it's from a
definitely.
peer.
Most definitely. I always say that if you go to someone on the street and you tell them you're a fundraiser, they think that you're a party planner, right? And that's not really what we do. It's a component,
Or we go for
but it's
lunch.
really not what we do.
And I think too, we're kind of in this transition in leadership styles. So, when I looked to leadership, when I was sort of stepping out into leadership, I didn't find a lot of role models that I could
Right.
put my hat behind. We have as women, we have Hillary Clinton, we have Angela Merkel. I just dated myself, perfectly aware of that. But these are women that identify with masculine
Right.
energy so that they're electable. Let's
Hmm.
just call a spade a spade. We don't have a lot of women tend to be much more collaborative. Why is that? Because in the good old days when we were around the fire stirring the soup, we had 5 kids around us, and all the women watch out for each other. What were the
Right.
men doing? They were out hunting. Both roles are important, Jack. I'm not talking about it's just making space for that collaborative style of leadership. And remember, collaboration from a masculine perspective can be seen as weakness. And we have a
Yes.
bunch of stereotypes we need to get over because it's not one or the other. Just to be clear to our listeners, I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm advocating for both, and the flexibility to shift between the two. That gets me really excited because look, you can't collaborate your way through a decision. You have to be
Right.
collaborative, and then you need to have leadership skills to decide. And that is absolutely the role of CEO. But we don't, it's a little uncharted, believe it or not, even for 2023. I mean, we had the gal in New Zealand who was the prime minister down there. And what did she
Right.
do? She stepped down because the price was
Yeah.
too high, Jack. And so, I have hope. Just to finish this theme, I really do have hope. I believe that there's space for all the different kinds of leadership. I'm excited that we can kind of shift and
Right.
kind of play with this. But we're gonna have to give up. It's not so much giving up power; it's giving up perceptions of the only
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah. And I think that, even looking at the different generations, right? So my two boys, my one is just finished his second year at college, and every project they do is collaborative. When I went to school, it was, Jack, you hand in a
Exactly.
project and you're marked on your own. So they have to learn how to work with other
Yeah.
people. There's always going to be someone who's not pulling their weight. There's always going to be someone who is driving,
Yeah.
beating the horse, let's get it done, 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 done,
Yeah.
done. And they have to learn those skills, which I think is absolutely great. So many times, though, we don't, people of my generation didn't have that growing
Yeah.
up as part of their education. So I
No.
think that, people dump on the school system all the time. I think that teaching these kids collaboration and how to work well with others is such an important life skill.
And think like they're going to have AI to do everything else. So all they're going to have to do is think strategically. And they're going to have to, I always say it from my leadership clients, don't let a good idea disappear just
Right.
because it wasn't yours. Like that's not
Yeah.
what good leadership
Yeah.
is.
Amazing.
No way.
Well, Jenny, this has been an unbelievable chat. I'm so glad that we had this. We kind of spoke about everything to do with fundraising and solved all the world's
Everything.
problems all at once, right? So it was great. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they do that?
You bet. So you can find me at jenny@chavender.com. That's Chavender like lavender, but with a CH at the beginning. You can also listen to my podcast, Underdog Leadership Podcast, on all of your favorite platforms. And I love hearing from people. And Jack, it's a real pleasure to be here and to have my own soapbox to kind of, have this dialogue with you.
Yeah.
I usually play your role. And so it's been kind of fun to be a little unleashed here and would love to hear from folks. So thank
Well,
you for
thank
that
you, Jenny.
opportunity, Jack.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.